Welcome, everyone. Today I will be talking about the price of tea, because most people think tea prices are pretty inexpensive, and they have been for a really long time, especially when you're used to seeing them in the grocery stores. So the price of tea varies greatly. And when you go to the grocery store, it could be as little as $3 for a box of 20 tea bags. It could be as great as a $5,000 cake of pu'erh tea for a vintage collector's pu'erh tea. So there's all sorts of tea at all different prices. If you're watching live right now, joining us live for the Essence of Tea podcast, say hello in the chat. Hello, welcome. I'm not really sure how to pronounce your name, but thanks for watching us from Los Angeles on YouTube right now. We're so glad that you've joined us. Let us know what kind of tea you're drinking today as we chat about tea. So, is it better to buy more expensive tea? Like, what does that mean exactly? Or is it really a ripoff? Now, there's so many different factors in figuring out what the price of tea should be valued at. And I say value because the end user, you and I, when we're buying tea, we're the ones who have to pay for the price of it. Now, maybe you can't really buy a box of 20 paper tea bags, that have the string on them for $3 anymore. With the price and cost of inflation, maybe that's not really possible anymore. But there are very inexpensive tea bags. There's really high-end collector pu'erh cakes. There is even those pyramid tea bags that are, that nylon or compostable material. I'm pretty sure this one's actually nylon. You can get high-end loose leaf teas too. Like I have a Tea Kuan Yin oolong right here. That's loose leaf. So what should tea be priced? And does more expensive tea mean that's better? Well, most people have been thinking that for a while, and it's totally understandable because you kind of pay for what you get, right? Oh, you're drinking Paris from Harney and Sons. Oh, delightful aroma. Amazing. Actually, yeah, I've had some Harney and Sons teas. Awesome. So how do you determine the price of tea? And how much should your tea cost? And how do you know if you're getting a good deal or not? So there's actually many, many different factors, but it always depends on the cup, the liqueur of the tea. So before you can even taste the tea, you're going to have to make the judgment of like, is this tea resteepable? Is that what makes the tea more valuable to you? For a vintage pu'erh cake, it's not just going to be that you can resteep it up to 6 times. It's that how old is the pu'erh cake? And now this is different because in the pu'erh category, it's not going to be necessarily on particle size, especially if it's compressed in a cake. And I can open this up. This is a cake from 2005. So this is a very expensive pu'erh cake now. If I was to sell this, I could get probably like $1,000 off of this. And it's falling apart on purpose because those are the pieces that I'm breaking off to make my tea with, right? So I can make my cup or pot of tea. And this cake was meant to be slowly broken off, and it has a vintage year of 2005. That's when it was manufactured. And so it's valued and it's priced off of, are you able to get 2005 raw pu'erh cake from Munghai factory in Szechuanbana, Yunnan, China? So those are some factors. It also matters on the particle size of the tea. Like, for example, this nice loose leaf oolong tea, if you just hold your tea leaves and kind of drop them into a cup, sometimes what happens is it sprays, the static sprays the small bits and pieces. And those small bits and pieces are technically tea crumbs, okay? Technically tea crumbs, because you don't want to drink these tiny little particle pieces, which you're probably going to drink, but how much of your loose leaf tea is these tiny particle sizes, and how much are these fuller rolled nuggets of a leaf? So seeing how your tea leaves expand through the water also determines the quality of the tea. Now you can also tell the quality of your tea by how fresh it smells. So this is a mint tisane. So you can smell it. Does it smell stale? Because just because it was expensive when you bought it 10 years ago does not mean that it's really fresh anymore. Depends how you stored it. Now, 2005, right? That is way, way more than 10 years, okay? And this is going to be valued about how rare it is, how old it is, how it's going to mellow out its flavor. This is a totally different category of teas for pu'erh teas. But your regular store-bought tea bag teas, there is a best by date on them. The shelf life of green and white teas are about like 1 to 2 years. The shelf life of oolongs, blacks, even herbals, 3 to 5 years, if it is well kept, like as in doesn't have much oxygen around it. Now you can see this tea bag, you can see the leaves in here, right? And half of the bag is air, right? And you're gonna get that wonderful papery taste with it, right? But when you cut it open is what you're deciding on, because that particle size and how it expands or doesn't expand is going to determine the value of that tea. So if you just open up your favorite tea bag and pour it out on a plate, you'll see that there are these tiny, tiny, dusty little crumbs, sometimes called fannings. Literally looks like dirt, evenly sized and looks like dirt, right? Well, no, they did not crumble and crush the leaves to be this small. This literally is the leftover crumbs that are this particular size. So can you imagine sorting tea crumbs into different sizes of crumbs? That's essentially what is called tea sorting, and sorting the different grades of the tea. So even though this might make an amazing cup of tea for the first time, it might not be resteepable the second, third, or fourth time. And yes, high quality teas are meant to be resteeped up to 4 times. So you might want to take your pyramid tea bag and open that up and see what that looks like. Okay, so like I got a pyramid tea bag here, and it's got bigger pieces, but let's cut it up and actually see what it looks like, huh? So we're gonna cut it up, and we're gonna like, oh, definitely much larger pieces, right? Much larger pieces. And you're going to want to soak your tea, like as in you're gonna make a cup of tea with it, you're gonna steep it. So when you steep it, how big do those leaves unfurl? Now this is just some brand of tea. Sometimes I get random samples from different companies. And it smells okay, but the leaves, even though they're bigger and now I can see them, they kind of look dull, which is not a good quality. So it's like how shiny and luscious are those leaves shows how fresh they are, right? So when you pour hot water over them, you're going to get those leaves to expand. And it might take time, especially if it's a really tightly rolled tea. It means it keeps its aromas and flavor in the tea better. Now I have some tea here that I have already steeped earlier today, and it's a white peony tea. And you can see how huge this half of a leaf is. It's a pretty big leaf, right? So that's a really whole leaf. It's not the leftover crumbs, right? So this tea by the cup, depending on what the price is you can figure out how many cups of tea this tea can make versus tea crumbs. Okay? So particle size matters, but in the end, it's the flavor and the quality of your cup of tea. And that was just like the beginning of it. There's more leaves in here. There's a full bud, a full tip in there. Wow, that's really nicely and huge, actually. This is actually a really good leaf size in my serving of tea. So you're going to want to compare the different teas, if you can, with them being wet. And then, of course, always the flavor of the tea. How well handcrafted is it? So something that is like more like crumbs will extract its flavor very quickly. Like this literally looks like pepper to me. But how fast and how strong of a cup it makes means its flavor gets washed out really quickly. So that way you don't necessarily know if you can re-steep it again. I mean, you do know you can't re-steep it again because all the flavor came out right away. So it's a great, amazing first cup, but the second and third doesn't taste that amazing. So in the end, was it cheaper by the cup? So how much value is the quality of the tea giving to your body? How much benefit of the nutrients, the essential oils, which is tied in with the flavor of smelling it, of tasting it. That's all correlated with the potency of the benefits of those tea leaves. And then the other thing to see if you're getting great value is weighing the tea. Technically, a serving of tea is 2.5 grams. So I have a gram scale here. 2.5 grams. And most of the time, when you go to the grocery store and you know how it's like how many dollars per ounce it is or how many pounds it is, look at the box of tea. That $3 box of 20 tea bags, sometimes each of those tea bags only has 1 gram of tea in it, less than half of a serving size in there, because it steeps really fast, extracts really fast, it makes a really strong first cup of tea, and that's it. And so when you look at the price of the tea, it technically is more expensive per ounce than the high quality loose leaf tea, right? The high quality loose leaf tea that you might get. And how many cups of tea is it? So the pricing of tea can value based off of the supplier, the packaging that went into making that tea, sell it to you in the grocery store, as in the paper tea bag costed something, the string, the tag, the overwrap, the box. That all costs the maker something, right? And so it might look inexpensive, but they have to compromise with a lower quality tea. So is it really worth it versus a high-end, nice loose leaf tea that might end up costing the same price but looked more expensive up front? Yeah, it is worth it, especially when you know that you're getting way more of the potency of it. So how much should your tea cost? Well, it really depends on you and how you value your tea. If you're a person who thinks of it as an affordable luxury and you like splurging on the hobby of tea, you're probably going to spend a lot of money on your tea because you know what you want. You're looking for certain attributes of the tea. You're looking for certain health benefits of the tea. And the more that's been handcrafted and loved and rarer and harder to get, the more expensive it obviously is going to get. Just like this crazy pu'erh cake that's like $5,000, could be up to $5,000 a cake. This has been broken into, so its value isn't retained because it's not perfect like that vintage bottle of wine, but you see where I'm coming from. No one can really find this rare 2005 pu'erh cake anymore. It's harder to get. There's few of them left on planet Earth, if that makes sense. Or what determines the price of the tea? Well, it could just be from all these different middlemen and brokers and tea brokers and person blending it all the way to selling it to the grocery store at a wholesale price and then selling it to you, which you take it home, and that's the final end price. There's many factors: shipping price, heating, fuel surcharge fees for freight, So many things that are inflating our tea prices. Oh, and one of the latest things is there's a prediction this year for 2023 that in China, that the price of teas are going to go up. A prediction. I don't know yet, haven't seen it happen yet, but they're going to be increasing the price of tea by 20% from China because of climate change and other factors. So when you see different environmental changes, less people working on it, inflation, and so many things, those are factors of making a tea more expensive. But is it worth the cost? That's up for you to determine. So if you want to learn more about evaluating the quality of tea, I've got a free book. I wrote a book called The Essence of Tea, The Transformational Journey of a Tea Connoisseur. And there's a link down below in the description. It goes to sippingstreams.com/my-book. And you can download the free digital version that has actual color photos in it to see the different grades of high quality tea. Or if you're interested in learning more about tea from one of our online tea classes from our tea education program, just go to universa-tea.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time on the Essence of Tea podcast.